Let's now move into part two, which is really about how to impress the boss, or if you are the boss, how to make social media work for your business. One of our respondents to this session has asked the question, well, look, I work for a small company, my boss has asked me to use social media, but I don't really know where to start. But I think on the other side, a lot of firms will actually be in the opposite position where, their bosses are discouraging use of social media because they're worried about the risks and what might happen, or not understanding it properly as well. Perhaps, how can we use social media to take it to the next level, therefore, in the workplace? Neil, perhaps I could begin with you. At Barclays Print, how do you use social, if you use social, in your business?
Okay, Paul, I'll give you a couple of examples, which are probably the best way of demonstrating it. We were recently invited to a tender for an engineering business that we actually didn't know, £500,000 a year tender. And so we had a look at the invitation and found the name of the individual that had originated it. I then went on to Google, looked up his name, found his profile on LinkedIn, and managed to work out that the job before last, he actually worked for one of our existing clients. And that was clearly the link. That was how he got to obtain us as a potential supplier.
Fantastic.
And then invited him to connect on LinkedIn. And when he accepted the connection, I could then engage with him and actually engage with him outside of the tender process, just to say to him, thanks very much, and that we were interested in engaging. And I wouldn't have been able to verify that the tender invitation was necessarily an accurate one without actually having to go directly to the company and potentially cutting across the way that the tender process worked. And another way we've used it, our most recent large machinery installation, very, very large piece of machinery. Machinery is very uninteresting to non-printers if the output is interested to the client. And so what we did was we put a time-lapse video camera up, and we then uploaded the time-lapse video of the installation of that machine to YouTube, because it was a better way for us to be able to communicate the physicality and the actual size of what we were doing than it was saying to people, we've installed a new piece of kit.
Fantastic. So it's a great story about how having a professional profile allowed this client to follow you and from his new company, which is brilliant. And the second example, I think, is a brilliant one of how you can, it's so easy for businesses to create Facebook pages and to create Twitter accounts, but I think that example of using that freeze frame video could bring something perhaps not that interesting to life in a really, really engaging way. So it's a really creative use. And again, I think for you, those of you watching this, think about your business. Think about the way that you do things and the stories that you can tell and how you can really, really bring them to life in a really, really interesting way. Jamie, if I may turn to you now as training manager at Manpower, how do you impress the boss at Manpower? How do you use these tools to make that work more effective?
Well, I'm going to take my lead from Neil, actually, because he gave you two examples, and I think I can probably do the same in the context of my role, which is very much more about learning and development. I think, again, LinkedIn has given me two great opportunities via the groups that are associated with LinkedIn to really, I guess, not only impress my boss, but I guess my team do this to impress me too. And we talk to delegates on our training courses about how they can use it to impress their boss too, I suppose, as well as us. So we've joined quite a lot of groups. I've joined a lot of groups. One of the cornerstones of our leadership development over the last couple of years, for example, has been around emotional intelligence, and I've joined some groups on LinkedIn, very easy to do, just found them very quickly on the search functions on LinkedIn, and that's opened up a whole world of peers, I guess, people who are also working with emotional intelligence. Some really good practical tips on how to use it in a practical way in leadership development programs. It's given me access to white papers and frequently asked questions and top tips and other research documents. So I think joining groups on LinkedIn has proved to be a really good learning and development tool in and of itself. The second way we've used something similar is to create our own groups. So the joining groups is about external networking. but we've created groups for a lot of the delegates that are attending some of our courses or workshops or programs, and that way what we can do is share internally best practices, we can share top tips, we can ask each other questions, and we can learn as we go along. And the key bit that's really helped us, I think, is that very quickly, both using the LinkedIn group and Twitter feeds, is to really share successes. If somebody's doing something well, we want everybody to know about it, and I want everybody to know about it, but I also want my boss to know about it. So I guess that's the answer to your question.
Perfect, perfect. And Jamie, if I might just dig a little deeper on that, because for some people watching this who may not be used to professional networking, as we call it, what does it mean? So what, you're connecting with people who do your job in similar companies? Is that the kind of thing you mean?
Sometimes, yes. I've joined some other trainer-manager groups, for example, so people who are literally doing the same job for different organisations as myself, and that's very helpful. Yeah. But actually, more often than not, I'm joining groups on subject matter groups and forums. So the emotional intelligence was an example of that, but we had a big change in legislation in our industry last year around agency worker regulations and so on. So any changes in employment law, is useful to join groups to see how they're dealing with those changes. So it doesn't just have to be peers, it can just be people working with the same tools and same issues and same problems.
Fantastic. And I think, Jamie, that's so interesting. And I think, John, when we think about, again, Jamie's given some examples there in terms of training and so on, but there's groups for absolutely everything, John. For anyone watching this who hasn't networked before, and there's groups for everything.
Exactly. So you can see here through my screen that I've done a group search on LinkedIn, and I'm looking for logistics groups. So I found a group here that focuses on trucking, supply chain, and logistics. So within this group, again, you can see the numbers speak for themselves. There's the best part of 50,000 members in this group.
Wow.
And these are all people who may be doing the same position at different organisations, maybe people who are experts within the industry, and they're all here and they're all collaborating and sharing their insights, sharing the latest developments about the area that's really important to them. So these groups and these conversations are happening around any subject that you might imagine.
And people can use these groups to personally develop themselves, to network, to take advantage of the kind of opportunities and the example that Neil just gave. And John, you just found that just by using the LinkedIn main search bar, you just type the stuff that you're interested in.
Exactly. So just click on groups and then type in whatever you're interested in.
Great. Okay. And John, it's not, of course, we've touched on LinkedIn a couple of times, but it's not just LinkedIn. There's communities everywhere.
Yeah, I think it's really important to know that conversations aren't just happening within LinkedIn. I mean, every platform that you turn to, the chances are that there is a specialist networking allocation to your particular industry. So I flipped over to Twitter just now, and I found the Print magazine Twitter account, which obviously may be of interest to Neil. But again, I mean, this is an expert or a team of experts who are sharing their insight into the latest news and development within print.
And you could drill down, you could click on the followers of that Twitter account and look at other people maybe doing the same job as me in my industry again.
Exactly.
Fantastic. And there is literally a community for absolutely everything, from everything you can possibly imagine. Again, Google is a good starting point to get a feel for where these communities exist. Lauren, if I might turn to you now as a Manpower game changer. Lauren, how do you use social in your job?
I think like Jamie mentioned, from a knowledge point of view, it helps me to understand what is happening in the industries that I'm working within. It helps me to be up to date. It helps me to understand what my potential clients are talking about. So when I am engaging in conversation, the conversation is relevant. Again, I use it for personal and professional development, and I know John showed a YouTube clip earlier, and I actually watched YouTube to help me ice a cake recently. So there you go. But yeah, I think from a personal and a professional point of view, I'm on all social media platforms. There are so many people engaged in those with so much knowledge. Yeah. It's just an excellent way to share it.
I love that, Lauren. I like sometimes thinking of Twitter as like sitting in the biggest office on the planet, in a cubicle. Sometimes I poke my head above the cubicle and listen to what people are saying. Lauren, the great thing about social, of course, is that, as you made the point, we've never had these technologies before, and now you can reach anyone almost anywhere. But the great thing is there's that feedback loop, isn't there? Like, who looks at my profile on LinkedIn?
Yeah, absolutely. It's one of the first things that I look at actually in the morning. Who's looked at me overnight? Because it gives me a reason to engage. We made the point. We're so incredibly fortunate to live in a day where we have access to so much information and to connect with people, not just locally, but internationally. We would have to physically be out there in among people to do this 10, 15 years ago, but it's all instant now.
Yeah, I love that. There was an example that one of my friends gave. She's a fitness instructor living in Tunbridge Wells, and I'd harangued her to get onto Twitter. She couldn't see the point. She got onto Twitter. Then the Tunbridge Wells local council retweeted her. A client had realised that she lived a couple of doors down the road. So suddenly it created an opportunity for her. So it's not just it's all types of different roles. John, Lauren mentioned the who looked at my profile on LinkedIn. Like Lauren, it's the first thing I look for in the morning. Can you talk us through this feature and kind of, what it might mean to people?
Sure. Well, this is a really great feature that's part of the native functionality of LinkedIn, so anyone can access this. You take a look at your own profile and you scroll down half the page, and on the right-hand side you see a little button that says who's viewed my profile. If I were to click that, I would see a list of the most recent people who have looked at my LinkedIn profile. So again, providing that I've put my information on LinkedIn, and I've put the right keywords in, and we've taken the steps I outlined earlier about ensuring that you've filled in your information, people will start to find you. So people who may want to interact with you, may want to buy from you, will start to find your profile. So it's really vital that you take a look at some of these people who are potentially worth engaging with.
And to bring together some of these strands, Lauren mentioned the point before about, it creates an opportunity to engage, so you have an opportunity to reach out to those people, an opportunity to begin a conversation. And ultimately, social is about having conversations. And Neil made the excellent point earlier that people buy people, and it's that human level connectivity. John, we started looking at the importance of groups for personal development, how you can impress the boss with insights and being on the ball and being connected, like Lauren's given us some examples of. But John, actually, it can go even further than that in terms of one thing that we might call in our business active listening, or actually being proactive and listening for opportunity.
That's right. So what a lot of people don't understand is that a lot of conversations that happen on social platforms are often in the public eye. So Twitter is a great example of this. So every tweet that I post is essentially indexed in Twitter and searchable. So it's not just the fact that people that follow me will see my updates. If anyone searches for any of those words that I've tweeted, they can potentially see that information as well. Which means that from a listening point of view, as a business owner or a salesperson or anything like that, we can start to identify some of the people we're interested in doing business with just by identifying some of the things they may have tweeted.
So this is the standard Twitter search tool you're looking at there. There's no extra technology. This is just Twitter standard search.
That's right. That's the Twitter advanced search. So twitter.com/advanced-search. And I can put in any keywords that I want to. So in this case, if I owned a garage in the middle of Hertfordshire, for example, I could put in people who say they need a mechanic.
So what we're searching is actually searching real people's tweets.
Exactly. And there's no shortage of them. There's the best part of a billion tweets posted every single day. So the chances are that someone has said some of these words at some point. I'm just going to put in a postcode. And hit search.
Wow.
Now what this does in real time, if I click all, are the people that have tweeted need a mechanic in some way or another. And again, you see here, these people are all within 15 miles of my garage in Hertfordshire.
Fantastic. So the action would be using my personal Twitter account to impress the boss, or my company account. I might act or mention, reply to that person and say, hey, I see you're looking for a mechanic, I'm round the corner, I'd love to help. Just again, creating that human conversation. I mean, that's really interesting. And if you're an SME, You know, I mean, that's powerful for any business, but for SMEs, for local businesses, using that Twitter search string is just such a great way to begin starting. And again, there's a guide that accompanies this series to with some support and some tips and advice and all the things we've looked at. Lauren, before we end this session, we've looked at some great stuff: connecting, being in networking groups, active listening. I'm sure a lot of people are watching this going, well, yeah, wow, that's awesome. But, you know, how do I make sure that it doesn't take up my whole day? How do you manage it?
Well, I think, you know, going back to the point that Neil mentioned earlier in the session, you know, you do have to be mindful if you're going to involve yourself in social media, then you know, it's better to be doing it than to do it half-heartedly. So I think the first point to make here is you have to be committed to it. But, you know, it doesn't have to take up 50% of your day. And you know, I had the same reservations when I became a social media user. But actually, you know, technology is advanced. I can use my mobile on the way into work. I have a 50-minute commute on the train in the morning. It's the ideal opportunity for me to sit and look at my LinkedIn profile, who's been viewing me, who's connected with me, what are my networks, what is my network up to, again, Twitter, what is everybody talking about, so I can almost actually plan half an hour when I get into work to start to respond to some of this stuff. You know, and additionally, I've started to ensure that those platforms, the platforms that I'm a regular user on, are accessible and visible on my desktop throughout the day, so I can, you know, if I see a group discussion going on, I can jump into that discussion live. If something happens in a particular market or with one of my clients, I'm up to date and I know what's going on.
Fantastic. So you literally get what, like email alerts or something to say, look, you know, there's a conversation here that I could potentially, you know, add value to. Yeah,
absolutely. And if you refresh your LinkedIn homepage, it will sort of feed up what's going on with everybody. You know, who's moving jobs, who's put an interesting status on, who's talking about what topics. If you just refresh, you know, every half an hour or so, you can see what's going on.
Fantastic. And Lauren, I think that's so interesting about, you know, that, as you say, that, you know, how you've organized yourself. So, you know, that kind of, you know, is a key part of your day, but it doesn't take over your day. And I think as we think about drawing together the strands of part two, which was about, you know, impressing the boss, you know, or if you are the boss, you know, kind of starting to realize, you know, the real value for you as a business. This is about developing your people. This is about their personal development. This is about identifying opportunities. This is about connecting with like-minded people. This is about listening to your potential customers. So hopefully, loads of really interesting stuff there.